to the Delmarva Almanac. Each week, we connect you to the best of Delmarva. Like other almanacs, our aim is to tell you a little bit about our past, our present, and events in the near future. I'm your host, Dana Kester McCabe. Many in our area know Bryan Russo as a radio journalist, but he's also a popular blues artist who has opened for a number of big-name national acts.
I ran into this woman that I used to know, way down in Pennsylvania where I used to roam. Found her love, the bottom of a well. He drowned in his debt as far as they can tell.
Bryan's passion for music began very early, growing up in a musically inclined family. His mother wanted him to learn to read music, so he began with piano lessons. By the second grade, he was taking violin, which he continued through his senior year in high school. In college, Bryan studied journalism on the advice of his father, who wanted him to have a profession outside of music that would help him to survive financially. Bryan decided to complete his education in Europe, but first he spent some time in Maryland.
I went to the 28th Street pawn shop in Ocean City and bought a guitar for $100 and just taught myself how to play. And thankfully, I had that bass and that theory, and I had strings on it, and I just sort of, I was blessed with pretty close to perfect pitch, and I just sort of figured it out and really became a student of it. It was something different than what it was like to play with a symphony, because it was just you. And I just loved being able to express myself not only with music but in writing songs too. When you have the audience, it's a brilliant thing. There's that moment right after you finish a song where it's that moment when the last note hits and before the claps start. That is the most gratifying, I think, for me. That's that moment of, how'd I do? And pretty quickly. But that moment, I think, is something that hooked me from the first time I ever played on stage when I was in third grade to what I'm doing now. And that doesn't matter if it's just a cafeteria filled with family and friends, or if it's 1,000 people opening up for a huge legend or a national act. It's that moment right before the claps. That it's not the claps, it's that moment before.
Bryan cites songwriters like Bob Dylan, Tom Waits, and Leonard Cohen, among others, as those who influenced his love of lyrics. In part because of his training as a reporter, he says it's the lyrics first for him.
For me, as both a musician and a songwriter and a journalist, I think it's all storytelling. Journalism is storytelling, and songwriting is storytelling. But, with journalism, you're telling someone else's story. And with songwriting, you have the, option to put your own story somewhere between the second verse and the hook, or the bridge. It's thinking music, it's drinking music, it's fun, but if you really sit down and spend some time with the lyrics, it's social commentary. And I feel like, there's not enough of that anymore. And some people build houses, and some people, create businesses, and that's their legacy. And I just want to write a song that's remembered long after I'm dead.
And it feels like something's coming. It feels like something's amiss. It feels like it might be the turning point. But baby, now it's only the twist. Baby, shake it like this.
Bryan has appeared as an opening act for the Black Keys, G Love and the Special Sauce, Vintage Trouble, Shooter Jennings, and rock legend John Mayall. He's now gone from being a solo act to forming a four-piece band called the Tragic Figures, with himself, Brett Conaway on drums, John Seibert on bass, and Mike Noyes on mouth harp. That education in journalism Bryan's father wisely insisted on provided him with a day job for quite some time as he built his reputation as a musician. Bryan covered sports in Philadelphia for the Associated Press, and up until recently he had an award-winning radio show on WAMU covering a wide range of topics about Delmarva. Though the show was dropped due to budget cuts, Bryan continues his work as a storyteller both in his music and on independent documentary projects.
I'm doing this web series now called Curtain Call, Historic Theaters of the Eastern Shore, which, it's basically trying to tell the story of all these old historic theaters that on the Eastern Shore, Delaware, Virginia, Maryland, that used to be the hub and the location where people would go on a Friday night or a Saturday night to get arts and culture, and how those rooms are sort of struggling and almost dying off, and there's passionate people who are trying to keep these things alive, and I wanted to tell their story.
Bryan is currently bringing his two creative passions together, working on a documentary and a companion album that has its roots in Delmarva's musical heritage. Researching that project brought him into contact with some fascinating and wise individuals.
This is interesting how something in journalism and a story can sort of turn into a song. So this song is called Too Many Cooks in the Kitchen. I was interviewing an older African-American lady and talking about this project that I'm doing for the film and for the story that inspired the film. And she, after we had shut the recorder off and we were sitting there talking and having a glass of lemonade, and she said, "Mr. Bryan, you know what's wrong with the world?" And I said, "Please tell me." And she said, "There's too many cooks in the kitchen. And they're all dishing up a little something that they say is going to feed your soul." And I thought, I agree with that, and I will, I'm going to go home and write a song about it. So that's what I did. Now I said there's too many cooks in the kitchen, dishing up a little something, say gon' feed your soul, baby. There's too many folks sit around bitching, dishing on them lies that they've been told. Oh baby, you say I ain't no gentleman. You gotta admit, little girl, that you ain't no lady. You say that I'm two different people. Even your mama says that you're 50 shades of crazy, but you can't be the victim when you're the one holding the gun. You can't go crying, baby, not saying that you're lonely when you go running from everyone. And I said there's too many cooks in the kitchen.
To hear the rest of this song, visit our website, delmarvaalmanac.com/arts. Find out about upcoming show dates with Bryan Russo and the Tragic Figures, and watch Bryan's documentary web series, Curtain Call, at bryanrusso.com. That's Bryan with a Y. We'd like to thank our community partners, the Friends of Delmarva Public Radio, the Community Foundation of the Eastern Shore, and underwriters EatDrinkBuyArt.com for their help in bringing this program to you, our audience. Our theme music was provided by Brightside Studio. This show has been a Moonshell production. Thanks for listening. Until we meet again, may the rhythms and tides of Delmarva bring you good fortune.